It's Monday, and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters. Hello, I am Jeff Arbuckle, and this is Monster Mondays presented to you by Film Seizure. Well, this week, it's time to talk about something I've never really done before on this show, and that is an anthology. This is 1977's The Uncanny. Now, what I just want to point this out because this kind of cracks me up just a little bit. This is listed as on Wikipedia as an anthology cat horror film, quote unquote. I don't know if there's any others that are can lay claim to that description. This is something that I kind of talked a little bit about back when I did the Uninvited. I am a huge fan of cats. Now, Uncanny is kind of an interesting little movie because in some ways it is trying to play up that whole Western idea that cats are in some way, shape, or form evil, or that they are agents of the devil, or what have you, which is kind of fascinating because this movie also kind of plays up a connection between humans and cats. It's very bizarre, and it's very almost like grim fairy tales type of movie, but this was, unlike a lot of anthologies that are done today, this was written by one single person, Michelle Perry, and directed by one person, Denis Hérault. Now, I believe this movie is actually French-Canadian in origin, while most of the producer, or the co-producer in this case, Milton Subotsky, he was an American who moved to England in the 60s and started Amicus Productions, which primarily made British horror movies. After Amicus folded, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute, Subotsky did make some Canadian horror films, or Canadian films, I should say, and this one is definitely very heavily French-Canadian in nature. So I think that that's a lot of the writer and director are probably from Quebec, and therefore kind of plays up that whole French-Canadian idea. But this is a movie that's done technically in 4 segments. There's a wraparound story from 1977, which is Peter Cushing and Ray Milland, or Ray Milland, actually. I mispronounced that. But they're in Montreal. Peter Cushing's a writer. Milland is his publisher, and the story, the three stories that make up the anthology angle of the movie take place in 1912 London, 1975 Quebec, and 1936 Hollywood. And I'll get a little bit more into the actual story, how they all connect here in just a moment. But as I mentioned, co-produced by Milton Subotsky. He was the co-founder of Amicus. I talked a little bit about him when we did one of the Amicus pictures, The Beast Must Die. He started out on TV in the 50s before relocating to the UK. And then he often partnered with his friend, which was another American, Max J. Rosenberg, who had also relocated to England, and they started and formed Amicus Productions. Now, Amicus ended the same year that The Uncanny came out, 1977. But after Amicus, Subotsky did attempt to bring The Incredible Hulk to movie screens. He also tried to adapt stories from the horror anthology magazines Eerie and Creepy. He even at one point in time tried to partner with former Bond producer Harry Saltzman for a movie called The Micronauts, and which is interesting because the time that this would have happened, the Micronauts toys would have been out in the US, Canada, probably England as well. I don't know if that was related, but what I wanted to kind of connect there, I really find how much Subotsky really liked horror anthology and based it a lot on the horror comics of the 50s. He produced the Vault of Horror and Tales from the Crypt and and those types of movies that were based on EC Comics series from the 50s. He had a connection to try to get the rights to some of those Warren magazines for Creepy and Eerie later on in the 70s. And in this movie, there are multiple instances in which people are reading comic books. I find it odd because Subotsky would have been slightly too old to be a comic book fan, and by slightly too old, probably way too old. In the 40s and 50s, when these types of horror anthologies could have been produced in his lifetime, he would have been in his 30s. So I don't know if it was maybe somebody in his family, his kids. He just was fascinated by the by the popularity of these books that drove him down that path, or maybe he did read them. I don't know, but I find it odd that he has a lot of connections to a lot of pop culture ideas. He with Amicus, he produced the Doctor Who movies, so he definitely was kind of the best way to put it, he was definitely connected to geek culture, or what we would call today geek culture. Very fascinated in things like Doctor Who, comic books, anthology horror magazines, and so forth. So it's worth mentioning. All right, so in this movie, we start off in 1977 Montreal. Wilbur Gray, who's Peter Cushing, he's known for writing books about paranormal things. He's written about UFOs. He's written about ghosts. He's now writing a book about cats. He is a very nervous fella, which almost would, like his publisher, Ray Milland, is like, I think he kind of picks up on that. And even though he's a very good writer, you can tell that Milland doesn't really buy into the stuff that Peter Cushing writes about. But what he thinks that cats are the devil in disguise, and he has 3 stories that he's written about in his manuscript that will illustrate this fact. And the first one is in 1912 London. We have a rich old lady named Miss Malkin, who is tired of her buffoon of a nephew. He wastes money. He's never appreciative of the things that she has done for him. So she decides she's going to write him out of the will, and instead she's going to give everything to her cats. And she has dozens of cats in her mansion. The maid, Janet, is actually her nephew's lover. And Janet has stolen a copy of the will out of the lawyer's briefcase after the old lady had kind of signed the new one, and takes it to her lover, who's like, hey, this is not good. We need to get rid of that, or we need to get rid of her. So the maid is trying to break into the old lady's safe to get the original copy so that they can basically make off with it. The old lady catches her trying to do this, and it forces Janet to kill the old lady. Well, the cats immediately try to take revenge. They prevent her from grabbing the will. They attack her when she tries to leave. She basically gets holed up in the pantry for they make it seem like it's several days, to the point where she's eaten all the food in the pantry and even has to resort to eating the cat's food to survive. But eventually she discovers that the cats, they didn't have to worry about the maid feeding them because they fed on the old lady. And they also feed on Janet too. And when the old lady's nephew arrives with the police to check things out, he gets attacked by the cats as well. The cats aren't bothered by the cops. They aren't bothered by the lawyer who's come with the nephew. They're just taking out the revenge on the people who conceived the plan to kill the old lady. Now, if you ask me, the cats were just kind of, taking it out on the people who killed the person who took care of them. But what do I know, right? Then in 1975 Quebec, this story is this is one where you begin to root for the death of a little child. So there's this little girl who arrives to live with her aunt, her uncle, and her spoiled cousin. The little girl's parents had died in a plane accident. She has a suitcase with some of her belongings from her old life, and she's being dropped off by the government to live with these other people. With her is her black cat, Wellington. Now, Wellington is essentially described as her only friend. Now, the aunt does not want this cat, but the uncle decides that, it would be too heartbreaking for her to lose the cat. So, what's the cat really doing that's causing any problems? But in particular, the little girl who's the cousin and the mom are horrific people. The spoiled cousin feels like that this little orphan girl is getting too much attention, getting too much from her mom, and does not like the fact that the cat doesn't like her and only likes the little girl, the little orphan. So she does things to constantly pick on the little girl, pick on the cat. When the cat, she blames the cat for doing things knowing that it would irritate her mother and the mother would want the cat out of the house. They're horrible people. Well, eventually they decide, let's go, the two adults, the aunt and uncle decide, let's just go ahead and get rid of the cat. The uncle doesn't really want to do that, but the aunt is like dead set on it. She wants to take it someplace in town that will put the cat to sleep, not give it away, not drop it off in the wild someplace. No, she's going to kill this cat, and the only friend of this little orphan girl that she's taken on custody of. Horrible people. When the little orphan girl tries to find her cat one day, the spoiled cousin is like, oh, the cat's gone away, it's going to be killed, and ha ha ha. And it's like, I want these people dead, and I want that little girl dead. It's so weird how, because I'm a big cat person, and if I was forced to give up my cats, I would be unhappy. Let's put it this way: the people who would be trying to force me to give up my cats would not be in my life anymore. So somehow Wellington does not get put to sleep. He returns, and he kind of cuddles up to this book of the little orphan girl's mother's that was a spell book. And so this is how she's going to go about getting her revenge. She makes the spoiled cousin itty bitty so that the cat would then attack her like she was a mouse. And the cat doesn't end up getting her. The little orphan stomps on the spoiled brat of a cousin, and I actually cheered. For the third story, this takes place in kind of old Hollywood. It's 1936 Hollywood. We have Donald Pleasance playing a guy named Valentine Dieth, spelled D-E'-A-T-H. Yeah, you just take out the apostrophe. It's Valentine Dieth. He kills his wife by swapping out a prop of a bladed pendulum that was originally made of rubber, and he replaces it with a real blade. Kills his wife on set, but they write it off as a accident. He's able to get his new girlfriend, which is just somebody who looks like his wife, just younger, to he basically gets her the role as the understudy, and they decide to basically live out the rest of their life sort of happily, I guess. So his wife's cat is still around in VD, as they keep calling him, which I also find funny because they love VD in this. But the cat is still in VD's house, and at first the new love interest is kind of into the cat, but he doesn't like the cat, and he plans on essentially getting rid of the cat one way or another. That cat ends up giving birth to kittens, and I think he kills the kittens. kittens, like off screen, but I think he flushes them down the toilet or something. It's hard to tell exactly what he did, but he immediately takes away the kittens from the cat, which also doesn't improve this cat's opinion of this guy. And basically he keeps the cat keeps following the actors to the studio and causes all sorts of things to happen, causes like a lamp to fall, so like it's kind of messing with these people. And what ends up happening is that the couple ends up trying to set a trap to either catch the cat or kill the cat, or both. They set out poisoned milk. They set out a fish on a bear trap. It's all these insane traps that they try to set. The cat, you can see, it's a really good job that the movie does it. It shows the cat's perspective, and you see the cat looking at each of the traps that are set up. It doesn't work, but eventually what ends up happening is the cat ends up causing the new love interest's death by forcing Donald Pleasance to let go of a rope that will shut an Iron Maiden on her. And then he is found with blood around his mouth, and when the producer says, "What's wrong? Has cat got your tongue?" Indeed, that cat has his tongue. This is a fun movie. It's a fun little movie about good old-fashioned cat revenge. I can't believe that this movie is actually something that it is made the way that it is, because like I said, it's a very confusing. Cats are evil, but also cats are extremely connected to their humans. It's a bizarre movie, but it's a lot of fun. But I think the best way to talk about my three things that I do every episode that I talk about that I like about whatever movie I'm talking about, I think the best way to do that this time around is to pick one thing that I like from each of the three stories that Peter Cushing is telling Ray Milland. And by the way, the movie ends with Peter Cushing leaving the manuscript with his publisher. When he leaves, he gets attacked by cats and killed, but it also makes it look like he just slipped in the cold weather down some steps. And Ray Milland is telepathically controlled by his own cat to destroy the manuscript, proving that cats are the agents of the devil. But anyway, so let's talk about the three things I like from the first part. And the first segment, the 1912 London segment, that's probably the best segment of the three. But I love the scenes after Janet has killed the old lady, and these cats are just coming out of the woodwork. There are dozens of cats jumping at, swiping at, just taking chunks out of Janet in this movie, and it made me giggle. And just because it's like, oh my God, how many freaking cats are there in this house? And it's like just wave and wave and wave of cats. And then when she thinks she can, go and get the original version of the lady's will, there's always a cat waiting to swipe at her hand. There's just so many cats that it almost becomes absurd. But it also is really funny. And I really like that part of that first section, even though I would still say the first segment, that 1912 segment, is the best overall. In the second segment, 100% I am actively rooting against people because they don't like this little girl's cat, who is her only friend. And this cat is probably the kindest of all the cats in this. It's one that is, it's legitimately like a heartfelt story. This little girl who's lost everything except for her pet cat. And that cat loves that little girl so much. But, it's like the mom and the spoiled, rotten brat of a cousin, the kid that's the cousin, are just such horrible people. I was actively rooting against them so that they could die by way of cat. And I think that kind of sums up how I felt about that whole section. The third section is probably the weakest section because it also has a very odd tone shift, because it is a little bit more lighthearted and treated like a madcap comedy of the 30s. But Donald Pleasance is chewing the scenery so much that I'm surprised there's any walls left to film against. He is so over the top in it, and because he's playing somebody who wants a younger version of his wife. He wants to get rid of his wife, and so there's a sinister while also a romantic angle to him. But on the screen, he's playing like a horror villain, and he's kind of over the top then. But then there's this scene in which he and his mistress are trying to catch the cat, and it's madcap comedy, and it's just a lot of facial expressions and slapstick comedy, and it's so bonkers. But I mean, it's I sometimes really want to see actors do more of stuff like that, particularly people like Donald Pleasance, who's often somebody who's done overly serious parts. And of course, I know him best from things like Halloween and so forth. So, you don't normally get to see this kind of Donald Pleasance, but it's pretty fantastic nonetheless. Well, that wraps up this week's Monster Mondays. Now, don't forget to check out new episodes of Film Seizure every Wednesday. And then you get new installments of Monster Mondays each and every Monday. And both of those things are found at filmseizure.com. You can also find these shows places where podcasts are found, like SoundCloud, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and we're even on Audible. You can also hop on over to Facebook and Twitter to follow us by just searching for Film Seizure. Also, you can check out my website, www.bmovieanima.com. You can read new text reviews each and every Friday morning. You can also go to YouTube and search for B Movie Anima, and you'll find the B Movie Anima channel there, where you can see the first season of B Movie Anima, the series. Season 2 will be coming later this year, but there are some episodes already there. You can also find those episodes at bmovieanima.com. And you can also follow that site at Facebook and Twitter as well. Just search for B Movie Anima, and you should be able to find it. So, until next week, stay spooky.